Welcome to another episode of The Summer of Me. I am so excited. We have a beautiful guest today. One of my very best friends, Rae, is with us. Rae and I have known each other, I don't even know. Actually, put it this way. I used to use Rae's fake ID as my ID. Her ID as my fake ID.
Yeah, my ID is your, yeah.
So I was 19, I think. Anyways, so my ex-husband and Rae's husband were like really, really close friends in college, and they met in college. And then Rae and I just like kind of became friends and have had babies together and just ran businesses together and lived a lot of life together over a lot of years. So I'm excited to have you on. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. I wish I was in person, but this will
next
work.
time. We'll give her give you like a second episode and you can be in person.
Yes.
We'll write it off. The government will pay for it.
Girl math.
Girl math, exactly. So I invited Rae on the podcast, mostly because she's pretty, but no, just kidding. She has a phenomenal story. Rae's, she has gone through so much in her life, and I feel like you don't really talk about it all that much anymore. It's like I asked her to do this, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago," which it really was.
Yeah.
But the podcast, obviously, we talk a lot about like overcoming adversity and just like relationships, and we talk a lot about divorce and all sorts of different stuff. And so I would love for you to kind of give us, even if it's just like the quick and dirty, like the background on your life and your story and kind of how you've gotten to where you are now.
Okay, so are we starting with college?
Yeah, you can start wherever you want.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
we don't need to get into childhood trauma here.
I know, I guess we don't. Okay, so when I was playing, well, I guess I'll start with like when I became a mother. So I was playing Division I soccer and had a serious boyfriend that I had moved away from to go to school. And he followed me to school, which my parents were not happy with. And they had good reason. But and I got pregnant in it was the end of my first season. So spring of 2020, winter of 2020. And we did like a shotgun
2020.
Wedding. Oh no, sorry. 2000. 2000. Oh my God.
I was like, wait.
I should have ran things out before I came on. So, but okay. So I got pregnant, quit soccer, did a shotgun wedding, was not a good situation whatsoever. Like, it was just abusive, and I wasn't like getting beat up or anything, but it was bad. It was unhealthy. So toxic. It was so unhealthy, and it did get very aggressive, I would say. And so I had Ozzy and I was still going to school. So I stayed in Pullman. We were at WSU, and literally got out of the hospital and went to a health class and took midterm.
With him? Did you bring him?
Oh, no. My mother-in-law at the time and my mom were in town. So they just kept him. It was just an hour. I remember we got out of the hospital. We went to Denny's or something for food. They dropped me off at my class and picked me up. And I mean, that was life for the next 9 months or 7 months, I guess, was taking him to class with me. And thank God I had the best professors, and I was still in my lower class years. And so it was a lot of huge classrooms and stuff. And I just sat in the back, and yeah, so that's what we did. And then things got really bad, with my ex, who I mean, it sounds weird even now. We were married for such a short amount of time. It even sounds weird to call him my ex, but, and he wasn't really in our lives for a long time in between, now and then. Mm-hmm. So, one night I had decided I got to get Ozzy out of here. So I waited until my ex came home drunk, wasted, and left loaded up our car and left at like 4 a.m. Like waited for him to pass out. It's like one of those stories. And literally,
how old was Austin at the time?
He was almost a year.
Okay. Ugh.
So, and had no, like, did not tell my parents. I mean, I literally showed up on their doorstep at like, I don't know, 8 a.m. or something like that to be like, surprise.
I'm sure they love that.
Yeah, they had just downsized their house. So, of course, they had just downsized. My little brother was still at home. He was finishing like his senior year of high school. And Ozzy and I shared this like tiny room with like a pack and play. And anyways, and it was so that like next year I stayed home. I healed. I went to therapy. I joined like Bible studies. I had my mom's help, who she was like great. She was very adamant about not being like the nanny grandma. Like she did not want to be the babysitter, but she was super helpful. I worked, a couple, like 2 or 3 days a week, and like really got my feet on the ground. Cause I think like anytime you're in a I feel like people kind of overlook the fact, like when you get out of a really toxic relationship, like you have to heal, like you have to give yourself time to like rest and like regroup, and because it's just really hard to make good decisions, when you're stressed, when you're like living in that.
Your nervous system is like on such high alert that you just like everything feels like a massive deal, or like, oh, this is going to end me. This is going to be the end of it. Like, I don't know how to handle this. So you do really have to give yourself at least a year, I feel like, to just kind of like process all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I stayed home for a year, and then I went back to school, and really, I guess the rest is kind of history. Ozzy and I made a life for ourselves. We lived in this small college town. It was pretty amazing. I worked for the athletic department, and so found like a lot of odds and ends jobs, like working at basketball games and stuff. And that's really where I met my husband now, Johan.
We love Johan.
Yeah. He's the best. So yeah. And I mean, I guess, I like look back at that season of my life, and I'm like so thankful. I'm so thankful for Ozzy. I'm so thankful for like that time that we spent together, and like all the growth I had during that season. Like I don't know what else could have happened in my life to have like caused that sort of snowball effect. But I don't know. What am I leaving out? I mean,
okay, so fast forward to now. You guys got married, and then eventually had 4 more kids.
Yes.
So how old are all the kids now? Like, what's the range?
God. Okay, so Ozzy's 23, which is insane. Espen's 17, Tilly is 15, Griffin is 12, and Poppy is 9.
Yeah. So I think what's really cool about your story is like you guys went from like, and I'll never forget, you made a social media post at one point about like beauty from ashes, and it was like so beautifully written, and it was just talking about like your story and how like you get to like this place where you're like rock bottom, right? Like you're like driving a baby in the middle of the night to your parents, like fleeing this situation, so to speak. And like, and you look at like your life now, and like you said, like you would not have been the person you are in the situations that you are now, or met Johan or any of those things for that matter, if you wouldn't have gone through this. And I think it's really cool to see like what you guys have built is this huge combined family that is like full of life and fun. And, you know, I think one of the the cool things here too is like you and Johan have like worked so hard on like creating this beautiful marriage and like this family. And, you know, just as like everybody has, like you have your ups and downs and have gone through things, but, you guys have like really leaned in, and I love that about you guys.
Oh, well, it is like so much work in having a blended family, even just with Ozzy. And maybe it was at times more complicated because he was like the only one, you know. I think it adds like a level of like complication, like emotion to things. So you know, at times there's a lot to work through. I will say, like, it's heartbreaking going through divorce, separation, like all that kind of stuff. and having your kids along with you, but there is something about it that like really bonds you. And I think that it's getting on the other side and being able to look and see like, oh my God, all these things I worried about, all these things I like obsessed about, and I could have really been more present and less like anxiety about it. Do you know what I mean? And I would say like the other thing that really saved me is somebody telling me, hey, there's two things. A pastor told me once, like, pray until you have peace. Cause I was like really having trouble sleeping. Like my anxiety was like through the roof. Pray until you have peace, which helped. Cause it was like, instead of spiraling, I had like another outlet.
Yeah.
And then the other
You're like, I'm going to be praying all night, baby.
Yeah, seriously. Sometimes like no joke. But the other thing that the same pastor said to me is that God doesn't waste anything. Like he's a resourceful God. He's always going to use your heartache, your tears, like all these things to create your character and to build your kids and your life and all these things. So I like, just for anybody that's in a tough spot, just to know it will create something good in the future. Like if you like stick with it and like push through and all that good stuff. I don't know. That's what.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's true. And I think it's easy to like, when you're in those moments, like I know like when I was like in the thick of our divorce, it was like you obsess over like what's next and like why this and like what's going to happen tomorrow and like where am I going to live and where, like all of these things. And I remember my therapist used to say like, there's so much power in like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's next. And like, she's like, the only thing you can focus on is like one foot in front of the other, and like just like being present in those moments versus like obsessing and having anxiety. It's much easier said than done, right? Like it's so much easier than being like, oh, I'm just there's like a TikTok out there or something that somebody's like, this girl told me not to like worry and like it cured my anxiety. Like it's much easier said than done, but like it really is like when you can figure out like whatever coping mechanisms or like techniques you can use to kind of be present and like just be like, I just got to get through today. Like I just have to figure out where I'm going to be like by noon, what I'm feeding my kids for dinner, like, and like how I'm going to pay this bill that's due today. Like, and then you move on to tomorrow and like a new set of problems or a new set of, and like it eliminates so much of that like forward thinking that like can cause like so many issues in our life.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yep. And I think too, like remembering like chaos also creates opportunities. Like I know that when things can feel like upheavaled or what do you say? Like, you know, but when there's also opportunities in that, opportunities to like problem solve or like change things, you know, especially if you're like in a situation you don't love, it's not bad that it gets uncomfortable and it gets, you know, maybe even a little overwhelming. Like there's opportunity in that. I don't know. I'm just repeating myself, but hopefully that makes sense.
I think I found in that situation too. So there's that opportunity, like a real tangible opportunity, but then there's also this opportunity, and you mentioned it a little bit, like the bonding with your kids, but also the belief in yourself. So like, being able to be like, I am capable. I do have this. Like I can do these things, and I'm not going to just like, you know, there was days where I was like, I'm just going to disintegrate. Like that'll just be easier. Like I'm salt, just pour water on me, like game over kind of thing. But like you do start to realize like, oh, I can do this. Like I'm stronger than I realized. I'm braver than I thought I was. Like, you know, stronger than I think. And like that carries you so far in life, even when you're, you know, like obviously you guys are married and you have kids and you have this full life, but like I guarantee like some of those things, some of those lessons that you learned through this process like have carried you through the hardships that you guys have gone through.
Yeah. I think too, it's like, you don't know what you're capable of until you have to do things. And it's not fun in the moment. Like just thinking back to when I divorced Ozzy's dad, he took the car with him. So he moved to Los Angeles. He took the car. And I was like, holy crap. Like we live off campus. Like, what are we going to do? My dad literally drove a bicycle with a baby seat on the back over to Pullman. He's like, this is going to have to work for the summer, you know? And I'm like, okay, I guess like that's what we did. That's how we got around.
Unbelievable.
I know.
Do you have a picture of
Can
this?
you imagine? Well, no, because there wasn't like camera, I don't. And it was just for a short summer season. My grandpa sold my parents his like old Ford, like 2-door, just junky thing. It was back when the speedometers would only go to like 100,000 and then they'd go back to 0. And my parents were like, oh, it only has 60,000 miles on it.
Plus 100,000.
It had 160,000 miles on it. I had to travel with like a jug of water in the trunk of that car, and like extra, like things would burst on certain like longer drives, and I'd have to. I mean, it was such a mess. It was.
It's
comical,
word.
but it was terrifying at the time. But it's kind of fun to like think about now that I.
Do you feel like you think about those? Like, do you think about those moments now, or like look back and like in like random moments in your life? Do you like look back with like, I can't believe that was my life, or like parlay those lessons forward?
I mean, I like love that was my life. And yeah, I think it's like in anything, you can always be resourceful. I think that's like a theme. I feel like it's a theme like in motherhood in general, is like resourcefulness, creativity. I think those are things that are not talked about or they're not like, not imposed, but like they're not things that are necessarily like praised even. And like, as we're like growing up, but I think they're so important. They're like vital for survival. I think in like a happy way to like be able to get through things without feeling like you don't have enough, you aren't enough, you like, no, I can figure out, like, I can ride my kid around on campus and make it to everywhere we need to be, even though I'm on a bike and it's not the most glamorous, but we could still do it. And, I don't know. I just think it's like it was such a valuable season in my life to know, like, even though my ducks are not in a row and I don't have everything I feel like I need, I don't have anything to be like anxious about, even, because you can make it work, I don't know.
I love that. That's so true. Because you also like have been through so much worse than like what's, I mean, obviously we don't know what's ahead, but like, you probably like look at that and you're like, well, it could be this, it could have been like in this situation.
Yeah. And I think too, like, Ozzy's been reconnecting with his biological dad, like over the last couple of years, really. And everyone's like, oh, how do you feel about it? Like, what's going on? Like, how are you doing with this?
Because Johan primarily raised Austin. Like, that was his dad.
Yeah. And we didn't really have like custody. We did early on, but like later on, we didn't really have any custody stuff that we had to work out. And I just feel like it's cool that I can look back and say, like, Oz has been good this whole time, and obviously he's had like his own struggles and stuff, but I think it's like reassuring to know, like, I can look at my past to also know that I don't have to worry now either.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like the joys of getting older, I guess. Like, you're not learning everything for the first time necessarily.
Yeah, and like
some things.
You've put in so much to like that relationship with him, and just like parenting and all of those things, that like you trust that like at the end of the day, like he is who he's going to be, and like he's good and true, and like it's not going to undo all of these things.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say, like, in this season of your life, what's one of the things that you're learning?
Oh my gosh. I would say, I mean, the whole teenager, like, obviously Ozzy was a teenager, but he was like oldest child teenager. Like, he's very different teenager than even Espen. And Espen's actually been pretty like chill. He's more like, you gotta coax him out of his shell a little bit and be like, hey, you gotta communicate, and like all that kind of stuff. Like, teach him more like the grown-up things. Otherwise he's like so easygoing and just the best. Tilly is like on another level, and I can't say very like too much, but like it's like, I mean,
what's she teaching you?
She's teaching me like, oh my God, how to stay calm. First of all, how to like, I think like stay in it. You know what I mean? Like, and not take things personally. I feel teenagers never take anything personally. It's like taking toddlers personally. Like when they like say something, you know what I mean? Like you are the rock, and it's hard because your lives are so like intertwined with theirs and everything. And so it's so easy to get like, oh my God, I can't believe she just is talking to me like this. Like, this is so, how could she do this? Like, I love her so much, and she knows how much I love her. Like, they're so irrational, but you think they should be so rational. And where like toddlers, you're like, they're so irrational.
You get a pass. Yeah.
And they're so freaking cute. And, you know, there's teenagers that are cute in their own way, but it's just,
it's not the same.
Differently. It's different. So, I mean, I think she's teaching me how to be a better person. Like, because I think a lot of the things that I realize that I'm trying to like get her to do are things that I should be doing too. So in a lot of ways, your teenagers are kind of like a mirror, I think.
Ouch.
They can't be. I know. It is. They are like truly a reflection of their environment. And so, you know, when she's like, always like, I'll do it later. Like, don't worry, like whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, why is she never keeping a commitment? And I'm like, holy shit. Like,
it's me. Hi. I'll never forget. This was like when our kids, we were in the throes of like, you know, elementary toddlerhood.
Kids. Yeah.
And Rae told me at one point, you gave me like one of the best parenting advices ever. And it was something along the lines of like parenting their hearts, not their behaviors.
Yes.
Will you elaborate on that? Because I think you guys really led with this, your whole like parenting.
Oh, totally. Yeah. First of all, like relationships are top for me. Like and I'm not going to enable people in my life, or I'm going to try not to enable people in my life, but my relationships are most important. Like, I don't care if you like destroy your room. I'm talking about like the kids, like you can act out and do whatever. My relationship with you is most important. So I'm not like going to like fly off the handle. But I have learned over and over again that kids are usually like your actions are an overflow of your heart. And I think about this for myself too. Like if I'm grumpy or moody or whatever, like what frustration is in my heart, you know, that I'm like that, it's like overflowing. Okay. So if you are paying attention to, only their behavior, you're not going to change what's causing it really, which is like they're overwhelmed. They're frustrated with something that's going on at school. They're like, Poppy the other night had a total meltdown at bedtime, she's 9. Doesn't happen very often. Johan was like, didn't know what to do with himself. So I'm like, okay, like take Poppy aside, you know? And it's like so rare. So we're like not in that stage of like bedtimes where like the sky is falling all of a sudden at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever. So I like, take her away and just sort of like letting her talk and work through it. And eventually it comes out. She's so stressed out about the state testing that's happening at school this week. And she's worried she's going to get held back in 3rd grade. Some other girl told her, like an older girl told her it took her a whole month to finish the test. And Poppy she's not like super book smart. Like she works so hard in school, but things take time. Like it has to like stew, you know, she's not like a quick test taker and stuff like that. So of course she's freaking out. Like it makes total sense that she's having a meltdown. But if we just like treated her action like you're too old to be crying because you don't want to go to bed, we would have like completely missed that whole situation.
Yeah. And the opportunity to like validate and understand how she's feeling and all those things.
And like have her back, like, so.
I think it's such a great lesson. And I learned this from you like very early on. And it's something that like really didn't like sink in deeply until we like moved and our kids had like all these big feelings about moving. And then we got divorced and like, and it was all these things. And like, we would have like meltdowns or just like, really like a lot of sass and stuff. And like, the natural instinct is just to be like, no, that's not acceptable. Like we don't talk that way or whatever. And
totally,
you realize that, like you said, like it's a reflection of like how we are too. Like I'm super irritable with my kids when I'm stressed or when I have something bigger going on or when I'm like emotionally like really upset about something. And it has nothing to do with them. But of course, like you take it out on your kids, you take it out on like whoever you feel safest with. And for our kids, that's us as their parents.
Yeah.
And
which is a good sign.
Yeah.
Technically.
Of course. That's what you want them to do.
Yeah.
But it is like just a really, really good reminder of like, I need to hear you. And like, you're human too. And so often we think of our kids as just like, oh, they're just like robots and they just like go through the motions. They go to school and like come home and like, but like turns out like they have, surprise.
Yeah.
They have like really real feelings.
Yeah. All they have to do is follow the rules and like be good. And it's like, oh, no, life's not like that. So
we have a lot of conversations where we say like your feelings are welcome, your behavior is not. So like addressing that, like it's okay for you to like feel these things, and like I understand that's why you're doing it. It doesn't make it okay to like hit or like you know, call me stupid or whatever.
Well, and I think too, like for boys are not always like that easy to crack, or some kids are just not as easy to crack. So like for Griffin, like if he's upset and I know he's upset, he won't give me anything until I'm like, you got to go have some alone time. Like you can't do this. You can hang out with us, but you got to go to your room if you're going to be like this disruptive or whatever. And then let me know and I'm here. So, it's not always like so easy and like, happens all at once. Like sometimes
it depends on the kid.
Takes a little bit of time.
Pry it out of them.
The other thing, like parenting wise, that has been like a guiding light for Johan and I, and this is a parenting class we took years ago that talked about being a safe place to fail. So, and I feel like this is more, I mean, we probably apply this more like with our teenagers and stuff, but like if you're failing a class or whatever, that's not a problem that's too big for us. We can like handle that, but we're going to expect that and we can help you come up with a plan of like how to get back on track. Like it's not okay with us that you're failing, but we're okay that you're failing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's so true.
And I think that's nice because you don't want you don't want your kids dreading to come home after school because they have a bad grade,
and they have to answer to you or like prove something to you.
Yeah. So, and it's, some classes are just hard, or it's hard to concentrate, or it's not fun, and so, they're going to fail, and it's like an opportunity. It's the same thing you'd want them to do when they're older. So
I was going to say it translates so smoothly too, to like, I mean, and I've said this on the podcast 100 times, like no matter how great you do, like your kids are going to end up in therapy for something. Like it's bottom line. But I do think like there are so many moments in which like you feel like as a kid, like you have to prove to your parents that you're this, or you can't mess up in this way. And like, it only parlays to your spouse or to your own kids, or, like whatever circumstances you're in. And so I think like understanding that, like, if I surround myself with like that, my core group of like intimate relationships, like they're going to be a safe place to fail, because so much of the world is not like a safe place to fail,
Totally.
But we all need that like soft place to land.
It's like not even a safe place to succeed sometimes. I feel like, that's another thing, I guess, like celebrating together as a family, So those are for sure like guiding lights, makes parenting like so much easier.
Yeah. All right. We'll close with this. If you could kind of give somebody some encouragement or just advice, if somebody's listening and going through some sort of hardship, whether that is marriage or parenting, divorce, like anything, like what would you tell them?
I would say journal. Like, I think that's just so valuable. It's such a good resource. It doesn't cost anything. It's just great to get like all your thoughts and words out and all this stuff and like say it and see yourself writing it. I think it's so helpful if you have like find like a small group, like 1 or 2 friends that you can tell, like people that you trust, ride or die. Johan and I have actually, I mean, we've been separated before. We didn't tell, we only told like a few people. It was not like common knowledge. I feel like you gotta hold things close and be really wise about who you talk to. So journaling, have a tight group. I mean, still have your friends and stuff, but like, don't tell everybody everything. And then I would say recognize that it's just a season. Like, I think thinking of like life in terms of like seasons, even if it's like a season in your marriage, like maybe what's causing the friction or whatever is just like a temporary like situation. It's not something like that will be perpetual forever. Maybe you just got to find a way to like get through this season or appreciate certain things about seasons. So I think that just to like give a perspective, like you're not stuck.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, there is without a shadow of a doubt, like harder times in your marriage, right? Like when you have babies or like when like everybody's working or maybe when you have teenagers, like I think it varies for everybody, but
totally.
I think like you said, like you and Johan went through a season where you were separated and it was like, is this going to work? Can we make this work? And like, obviously you guys were able to come out on the other side of that and make it work. And, I think it's important to know that like there are things, obviously our marriage didn't end the same way. Yeah. And like those were things that like they weren't just a season. They had lasted the entirety of our relationship. And like there was no telling that was like ever going to be like things that were going to change. Yeah. And so like you do have to like look at things that way because it's really easy to get in that like all or nothing mindset. And that's just not like that's not how life ever goes. I mean, look back to 10 years ago. I think this is like always such a eye-opening like exercise is like, I do this on my phone all the time. Like go back to even 5 years ago in your camera roll if you have it, or like totally find a calendar. I save all this stuff because perspective is such a gift. And if you look back, I look back at 5 years ago on my camera roll and I'm like, I was a shell of a human in so many ways. Some of the ways I wasn't, but like I was not who I am today. I was happy in like some ways in some situations, but I like the goal is that you continue to see growth and change and like you see that you can get through the hard things no matter how it ends. Yeah. It's just like a very powerful exercise. Yeah. And it's like proof that you can evolve too, Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes like the most therapeutic thing is to go back through and like look at stuff, and sometimes compare like what was good or, like the good and the bad stuff. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. It was so fun to have you. And if you guys tell people where they can find you online. Okay. So Rand Kelly on Instagram and Rand Kelly on my website. And we'll put her links below. Yeah. And you can go follow Rae shares like cute style stuff and all about the kids. And like, you can see their cute little house, recipes, all sorts of fun stuff. So anyways, thank you guys for listening to Summer of Me. Thanks for listening to the Summer of Me. You can listen to episodes on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube. Come hang out and follow my chaos on Instagram @KendraForNow. See you next time.